This is Regain Wellness Podcast with Jamie Logie, episode 169er. How should you approach your health and fitness in the new year? Hey guys, what's happening? Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Jamie Logie. I run regainwellness.com, and this is the Regain Wellness Podcast. Thanks for coming on out. Happy New Year, all that good stuff. So, there's no way to not do some sort of New Year's resolution change in the New Year type episode. And this isn't, it's sort of about the idea of New Year's resolutions, but it's more about the approach to everything, getting in the right mindset, and then also some actual tips you can use if making your health and wellness and fitness is a priority this year to you. You're not sure where to start. So this will kind of cover the whole gambit of everything and some things to get you started. So let's get right into it. So it's a weird time of year because we're coming out of this sort of onslaught of excess and food and drink and indulgement and all that sort of thing for the last 2-3 weeks, or depending how far back like any Christmas or holiday festivities go. And so I did a whole episode, actually the last episode, all about how to kind of navigate your way through all that if your health and nutrition and diet and everything is important to you, but to still enjoy yourself at the same time. And the main takeaway I had from that is during this time of year is, allowing yourself to indulge, but not overindulging, where you just kind of create this, super excessive situation that's, hard to come back from. It's not that you're what you do during the holiday season is just going to completely derail everything, but it can be an issue. I mean, the average weight gain over the holiday season is anywhere from 3 to 5 to almost up to 7 pounds on average that people put on, because it's, it's a lot of excess sugars and carbohydrates and starches and alcohols and mixed drinks and all that sort of thing. So it's, it's hard to avoid. But at the same time, if you're navigating carefully, with what you were taking in, allowing yourself to enjoy yourself but not super overdoing it, even with those few changes of, maybe an extra 2 or 3 pounds, that can actually even itself off when you get back into your regular way of eating and sort of your regular exercise and, taking care of your water intake each day and watching the sugars and the liquid calories and all that stuff. When, you might come out of the season with that little bit extra weight gain, those days you might feel more bloated or there's more water retention. That stuff, it can even itself out pretty easily. But if it goes completely off the rails, you're walking into the new year and it's hard not to ignore the sort of avalanche of New Year's resolutions and getting fit and, or other goals like quitting smoking or budgeting better and whatever. And, it's been commonplace to rip on that idea of setting New Year's resolution. There might be a good reason to not do one. The odds are traditionally stacked against you as far as failure rates and drop-off rates and all that, no matter what it is, really. Especially, health and wellness and fitness tend to be the number one go-to choice for a New Year's resolution. And I used to be, I've said this on the show before, I used to be kind of against that whole concept of a New Year's resolution. And I recognize the statistics that, sticking with it are very slim. But I've kind of changed that approach because I still believe that setting that New Year's goal or your goal for the entire 2019 is still very effective if it's done in a very specific way. It's tough to ignore. For every article you see online talking about here's how to get fit and here's how to improve your cardio for 20 and all that sort of stuff. There's some saying don't waste your time and whatever. And I think that's actually a very negative approach now. And I think that's an easy way out to say, what's the point when the odds are stacked against me? And I say they may be, but because the approach is taken in the completely wrong mindset. And I'll show you why that is in a second. So I think it's at the very least, it's every time the new year comes around and there's the idea of weight loss and getting fit, at the very least, it's you don't want to call it like a nagging reminder, but it's that constant reminder that's automatically going to come up every year. And I think that can be effective too. Like sometimes it does take that bit of to get in that state of being uncomfortable and that reminder to get going. And like clockwork, every year it's going to come up, and there'll be years you tend to ignore it, but that one year it might click in. And ultimately that's a good thing because it's going to be for your overall health. So I do think there's a benefit from that concept of a New Year's resolution. So the problem that happens and why the odds are against you and why you probably wouldn't stick with a whole New Year's resolution is because the expectations are so big and people take on way too much all at once, like all at the same time. They immediately jump headfirst in, which is, it's good if you're excited about something and you want to get going. But when you take on if your goal is to lose 50 pounds by the Super Bowl, that's probably not going to happen unless you lost an entire limb at some point in an alligator attack or whatever. When you go from, say, doing absolutely nothing to I want to start doing like CrossFit or like F45 boot camp classes 6 days a week. I want to go from eating like takeout and processed food to a completely overhauled organic diet and getting and taking like yoga 3 times a week with full stretching sessions, recovery drink. Like if you go from one day and then the next day going into that, there's no way you're going to keep up with it. It's just completely overwhelming. It's going to leave you frustrated. It's going to leave you feeling failure in a sense. And that's why any of these type of New Year's resolutions have these bad fail rates, is because people take on way too much at once. When instead you want to look at more of an idea of a slow, steady habit forming and building road in 2019. And you're looking months down the line here. You're not looking like what things are going to look like at the end of January. Like you're talking like June and July. You want to have a slow, steady build of new, like sort of a new process and a new habit experience in your daily life. Something that's added in gradually as opposed to a whole complete overhaul. Because those are I'm telling you right now, though, except for like, there's like a fraction of a percent of people that can actually do this. If you're one, that's amazing. But it's something like under 3% of people can take on a massive lifestyle change and stick with it in the long term. Like we're not talking about sticking with it like for 2 or 3 weeks. We're talking about like years and years. So like there are great other times of the year to start taking back your health and your wellness. I always like the idea of the fall and sort of September. To me, that's kind of the real new year. As you're getting out of the summer season, there's that transition and it's back to school. It seems like a little more of a definite change in the year as opposed to January 1st, where it's like, well, everything's sort of the same. You're kind of back to work. The weather can still suck. So, I mean, if it's something on your mind, it doesn't have to be this time of year. It's helpful as a set reminder because you can get going. But like I always say, well, you hear this as well too, like the best day to start exercising was 2 years ago. And then if you couldn't do that, then it was a year ago. If that's not possible, all the way up to like yesterday is the best day to start exercising. If you can't do that, today's the next, the best day, and so on and stuff like that. So the idea ultimately is to take little habits and progressively get them more detailed and more specific, but let them grow over the course of weeks and months. So I'm talking like when you start a new habit, you want at least a week on that, maybe even 2 before you move on to another one, as opposed to making like 10 different changes all on the first day. Have 10 changes and spread them out over 10 weeks, and you're way more likely to stick with them and almost not even notice that you're adding them in because they're so gradual. And the idea is you add them in where they become just like regular day occurrences. You do them without even thinking. And then that is when actually create a new healthy lifestyle. And then it's easier to make other more detailed, complicated changes, like very specific stuff, say with like moving into finding like real local, like organic growing specific foods or something like that. It won't seem like a big deal because you've already made like all these little changes, or adding in like a higher intensity interval training sessions, because you've already been doing consistent workouts and you're feeling fitter and stronger, and it's easy to kind of progress into these new workouts. So that's the main takeaway here, is to let yourself slowly and gradually add in habits that aren't overwhelming at the start, and that's going to make you very likely to stick with a new healthy lifestyle. You've heard that, I've talked about this before, but you've probably heard that idea of it takes 21 days to build a habit, and no one's really sure where that comes from, but I'll tell you where it comes from. And it's actually incorrect, because it started in the 60s, and there was a plastic surgeon in, I forget the guy's name now, sort of like in California based. And he found, obviously, when people were having like entire facelifts, and whether it's like facial reconstruction or just like a cosmetic change to the point where their face looks different, he noticed that it took around 21 days till they got used to what they were seeing in the mirror, and they recognized and became more in tune with this new look. And it took 21 days. And for some reason this might have been in the late 50s, for some reason, sort of these like psychological mainstream books and psych pop thing, whatever, they somehow jumped on this and said, oh, it takes 21 days to develop a habit. But this isn't really what it's connected to. And then for some reason that still existed to today, where everyone's like, yeah, 21 days to develop a habit. For a real big, actual life-changing habit, it's more like it's in a 6-week period. It takes to become comfortable and commonplace. But so like this is different. I'm not saying like take a new habit like drinking lemon water each morning or something like that to help cleansing or whatever, and that's going to take 6 weeks to stick. That's more for bigger life-changing things. So like with these smaller little habits, a week or so is usually not bad, because it's not something that changes your mindset and your approach and your thinking and whatever. It's just something you'd like, oh, glass of water, lemon, boom, down, go on with your day. So it's sort of two different categories, but that's that whole 21 day to a habit myth. So here's some things I'll start saying that you can add in and then gradually let them become part of your daily life. It's for the new year here. So the first one is about hydrating as soon as you wake up. And you might be tired of always, it's like, it seems to be always the number one thing, like always drink water, always hydrate. And to the point it's like becomes like background noise. You see it everywhere. But I'd say this is probably one of the best things you can do as soon as you get up in the morning. And it's when you kick off your day with hydration, it's going to help your body wake up. It's also going to help cleanse itself. It's going to help you function your best through the day. If you think like at night, you're basically, if you're sleeping, ideally 8 hours, you're basically dehydrating yourself for 8 hours. There's a lot of processes that happen in your body as you sleep, and they involve water, and you haven't had a sip of water through the night. So when you wake up, you're essentially dehydrated. So you want to start that rehydration process. And water is more like, everyone thinks of the concept like hydrate. Okay. Is that to just make you feel good and fresh and whatever? Partly, but water obviously is so critical for so many processes in the body. I mean, your body is 2/3 of water, and it's involved in digestion, absorption, body temperature regulation, transport of nutrient. But you obviously can't live without water. So the best thing is to, as soon as you wake up, have a glass or two of water to get yourself hydrated. And you don't even necessarily want like cold water. You want even like lukewarm is a bit better, so it's not as much like a shock to the system. And you don't want to chug it. You're not a frat party. Actually, anytime you do have water, you don't want to chug it. You want to sip it. When you chug water too quick, not only it makes you feel maybe uncomfortable and bloated and whatnot, it actually can make you thirstier. because it's just this like flooding of your system with water as opposed to like a gradual introduction. Think of it as the same way like when you water a plant, you don't just like dump water on it to flood it, you like lightly sprinkle it and whatever. So when you get up, have a a good pint full or a large glass or two and slowly sip it. And like I said, to kick it up a notch as far as to give it more of a natural cleansing and detoxification, take like a half lemon, squeeze it in there as well too. That's going to be very beneficial. Another habit you can do, say you're doing just this morning water, then the next week you're doing the morning water with the lemon. Then the week, you can actually even add in some apple cider vinegar, which again, good for digestion, absorption. There's a lot of good B vitamins in it. Apple cider vinegar can do quite a lot. I won't go into it because it actually gets pretty detailed as far as a lot of the research and science, but you can check it out. I did a whole show on it. So if you want to go today to regainwellness.com/169, that's going to have all the show notes, and I'll link up episodes and other things I'm talking about. So I'll do that one on apple cider vinegar. And it's pretty amazing stuff, and it's pretty cheap and easy to add in to things like this, like having that first couple glasses of water in the morning with that lemon and to get yourself going. Okay. So I'm going to follow up. The next thing you can do through the new year and getting yourself healthy and well and everything is with the water is increase your daily water intake. And like I said, with how important water is with all that stuff like digestion, absorption, circulation, all like even like your cognitive function, your focus, your memory, your concentration, water's so crucial for all that. So it's, there's a good chance on any given day you are probably dehydrated through a majority of it, so your body's not functioning as good as it can, but you do that so often that you get used to being in that state and you might not necessarily notice it. So your goal now is to start drinking half your body weight in ounces of water each day. So if you haven't been doing that already, it can be a little tough to just jump into that. And that's another thing I'd say, like, don't just go full board with having like no water each day into drinking half your body weight. But if you've taken that first habit with like having that large glass or two each day, that's a good jumping off point, and you're not going to need as much later on through the day, and it's easier to get. So you want to just like, take your weight, cut it in half. So it's in pounds. So find out your body weight in pounds, divide that in half, and that's how many ounces of water you want to take in each day. And it's also important, like I'm saying, like a lot of people are dehydrated probably. If you're drinking, I imagine, coffees or something at some point, caffeine is a tough one. It acts as a diuretic, and it can lead to dehydration. So just because you're drinking a liquid doesn't mean it's like replenishing fluids or anything like that. So if you are having coffee, getting in extra water is even more important through the day. So make that one of your other goals. Okay. Next one I'm going to say is ditching vegetable and seed oils. So that's any type of, canola oil, sunflower oil, vegetable oil, anything. This is one of the biggest tips that comes up when you talk to people involved in nutrition, dietitians, nutritionists. It's one of the top things with, like, besides ditching sugar, is get rid of these vegetable and seed oils. They're so harsh on the body now. They go through so many different kind of high heat mechanical chemical extraction processes that it really kind of pollutes this stuff. They make them, they're almost turn, like say with like a canola or vegetable oil, they can almost turn rancid. And a lot of the manufacturers, they add in these deodorizers to take away part of that smell. That's how harmful some of these things can be. Ultimately, they lead to too much inflammation in the body. And, you talk about like omega-3s and omega-6s and stuff like that. Ideally, you want more of an omega-3. You want to sort of favor that as opposed to omega-6s. Some omega-6s are good and clean, but you want ideally like a 1-to-1 ratio in your body of omega-3 to omega-6, maybe like a 2-to-1. But with the amount of like processed foods and like all the vegetable oil based things and processed package, whatever, our omega-3 to 6 ratio is like 20 to 1, maybe even 40 to 1, depending on how much of that stuff you eat. So that's when you have that misbalance in the body, that leads to some real inflammation, and inflammation can be seen to be at the root of a lot of bad diseases. So to keep think of like inflammation, like if you get like a splinter on your finger and how it gets red and swollen, that's inflammation happening that you can feel. That can happen in your body, but you're not going to notice it the same way you would like on your hand. And that's the problem when you get into this misbalance of omega-3 to omega-6. And when you have too many omega-6s, which come from these vegetable oils, you can be leading to that condition in your body. Ultimately, it's something you don't really need. So instead, now you want to start replacing those vegetable oils with just like an extra virgin olive oil, maybe a coconut oil to cook with, even an avocado oil, and use those things to make your own dressings, marinades, everything like that. It's so easy and it's so cheap, and it tastes so much better than buying like a commercial salad dressing that's just full of this like highly refined inflammatory based vegetable oil. And then those salad dressings probably have a ton of crap too, and sugar and artificial flavors and whatever. So get just like a simple extra virgin olive oil, make your own dressing, mix it with some like red wine vinegar, maybe some like balsamic vinegar, even like apple cider vinegar. You can like whisk this together. It's so easy to do. Like mix it around. Like I like to do extra virgin olive oil, some fresh lemon, even a bit of water, and it's this like very zesty, light salad dressing that's not only good for you, but I think tastes way better. You can find there's some companies that do more of those olive oil based dressings, salad dressings, and they're not bad, but have a look on the ingredients, because a lot of the times they'll also still contain a lot of vegetable oil. They'll have olive oil, but then they'll throw in like some canola and whatever. If you can find a commercial one that's just like a straight up oil and vinegar type one, do it. But I mean, it's so much cheaper and easier to make it at home. And then you can get, depending where you live, if you have some good grocery stores near you, good markets, you can find these higher end olive oils that are infused with things like herbs, or like chili pepper, or fig, or there's so many things. And there's even again, depending where you are, these straight like olive oil stores where they get this super pure stuff, and then you can like bottle it yourself, and they get it in these specific like darker glass bottles that eliminate light, that can prevent like the breaking down of the olive oil. So I mean, so I like to do that too. There's one near me, and it's like a herb basil sort of olive oil, so it's got that infused flavor into it. So mix that with some a bit of like balsamic, mix it together. It's the best dressing in the world. You can use this stuff just straight up, and it's amazing for all sorts of stuff. So that's the next thing I'd recommend, is start getting rid of that processed fake vegetable based oils and stuff like that. So the next one, here's a big one, is to start replacing grains with greens. And another huge recommendation you'll see from a lot of people, and honestly one of the biggest things that can have a massive overhaul for your health, your diet, everything like that. If you start, like, we eat way too many carbohydrates, and also the wrong type of carbohydrates, like inferior type ones. I mean, there's really good ones out there, like oats and sweet potatoes, even regular potatoes, wild rice, brown rice, pretty good. How many you need is still an issue, and depending on how active you might be. If you're not very active and you sit at a desk all day and you're not up and moving a lot, you probably don't need massive servings of carbohydrates. That's a lot of excess energy that, if not used, can be potentially turned into body fat. But like, sweet potatoes and they're still a very clean, high nutrient source food, as opposed to white bread and white pasta and starches and white rice and things that, again, are heavily starch based, that can cause rapid spikes in blood sugar, and they can lead to maybe more hunger or body fat storage and stuff like that. So if you have a lot of, say, meals where you'd have a lot of extra, say, white rice, or you'd have like a lot of bread with it. Start replacing those with greens. Anytime you have like a heavy starch or whatever, if you can start replacing that with, say, like a simple mixed salad with some kale and some spinach, maybe some mixed greens, some arugula, throw in some watercress, and then use that salad dressing you made out of extra virgin olive oil, it can have a huge impact. And again, it's one of the most recommended things by a lot of health experts. So 4 simple words: replace grains with greens. Okay. The next one, not a specific nutrition tip, but probably one of the biggest things overall that can help with your health and wellness is just getting more sleep. And again, something I've covered a ton on this show. And if you're here for the first time, I've got a lot of episodes on a lot of different stuff and with a lot of nutrition experts and fitness experts and TV show cooking challenger, people who've been on MasterChef and Top Chef and whatever. So I've covered a lot of things, and I cover sleep quite a bit. So if you want more detailed info on some of these episodes I've done in sleep and how to get better sleep and like what your room should be set up like in your bed and all that, again, go to the show notes, regainedwellness.com/169, and I'll link up some of those episodes. But the quick rundown is we have a better understanding now of the damage that comes from a lack of sleep. And to sum it up quickly, the less you sleep, the more stress hormones you have in your body, and they can cause a lot of problem. And I'm pretty sure your day is full of enough stress as it is. And the way that you burn off those stress hormones is through sleep. That's part of what it does, among a lot of other functions. It helps burn that off. So, 7 to 8 hours is still the good target, and maybe 6 you can get by with. Ideally somewhere between 6 to 8. And when you don't sleep, your body thinks there's some sort of trauma going on, or else why wouldn't you be asleep? And then that's when that stress hormone release comes out. And a little bit of stress hormones is actually very good, and you need it. But when it's over the long term, like chronic, constant stress hormones, again, that's when you're leading to a lot of real problems. So important thing besides the amount of sleep, start creating a good wind down process each night, so your body recognizes the stages of sleep are coming, and it's more likely to start shutting down. Cut out caffeine after 2 to 3 p.m. Simple things you do: keep your room as dark as possible. Try to avoid blue light from electronics at least an hour or two before. That help when you expose yourself to too much of this blue light and this artificial light, it prevents the release of melatonin from your brain, and that's important in your sleep cycles and your circadian rhythm and deeper and more restorative sleep and stuff like that. So those are just a few things you can do right away. Like you can do them tonight to start getting better sleep. Okay, so we'll do one more here. Again, like this could be a 10-hour show, but I'm going to go like these are 5 of the big things you can start doing and slowly adding in. So from a nutrition standpoint, probably best to say for last, but is to eliminate or drastically reduce your sugar intake. And again, people a lot smarter than me, this is always like top of the list for what they say is the first thing you should be doing as far as setting a goal for better health and wellness and diet. So no surprise, the horrific amount of sugar we're exposed to, and when you increase your intake, the damage that does in the body from not just like weight gain, obesity, diabetes, heart disease. I mean, it's connected to so much stuff. It's addictive. It makes you crave more of it. It's kind of a never-ending cycle when you eat sugar, especially like refined sugars. And then even when you get into like the high fructose corn syrups, and like this stuff's practically, it is poison. You can't even call it practically. It's straight up poison. And like I said, a lot of other people agree this is such a good place to start with, is to eliminate or drastically reduce as much as you can. So the first step I would say at the very least is cut out liquid calories. That's where you're getting the easiest intake of sugar. It's a lot of calories. You don't notice you're taking it in because it's in liquid form. And then it's like jet fuel. Like if you're drinking something like a Coke or a Sprite or whatever, I mean, every now and then, whatever, but if it's constant every day, that stuff's like jet fuel. It just spikes your blood sugar so quickly. Doesn't fill you up. You've taken in all those calories. Your blood sugar will drop. You'll want more of it. And a lot of those drinks kind of have a built-in thirst mechanism to it, like something like, say, like a cola. They'll, besides the sugar, there's also like caffeine, and we talked like caffeine's a diuretic, so your body's losing more water and it wants to replace it, but then your body will crave the sugar as well. And then some of these drinks will have different sort of forms of sodium in them, and that increases thirst. So you got this thing that's making you lose water, then making you want to drink more of it that you're craving, and then that keeps happening throughout the day. So it's this sort of like never-ending cycle of craving, losing water, craving sugar, blood sugar going up, craving that specific drink. It's a kind of perfect mechanism as far as being able to sell a lot of these things. So cutting out the liquid calories through, you know, soft drinks, juices, full like heavy like latte, Starbucky drink, like base coffees that are almost more like desserts than they are coffees. Coffee's very good. The more fresh and natural it is, as long as it's not loaded up with like cream, sugars, sweeteners, all that crap. So yeah, at the very least, start cutting back on those liquid calories. If you drink a lot of soda or pop here in Canada, or a lot of sugar-based things, you know, if you have trouble getting off them, because they are addictive, there's one little tip you can do. If you can go straight up and go into just like drinking a carbonated sparkling water, a lot of times, besides the sugar and the craving, people do crave that carbonation, that bubbly sensation. So if you can at least straight up switch to a sparkling water and add in some like lemon or fresh squeezed lime, that's awesome. If you have trouble because you've been drinking this stuff like 5 cans a day for the last 20 years, it can be hard to immediately transition out of it. So a tip that can work is if you take, instead of say like a full glass of like, just say Coke as an example, and instead of having that as all Coke, have it like 2/3 Coke and top the rest up with like a carbonated water. So it's starting to cut down on the sugar and the calories, and, you know, having that for a few days, then go half and half Coke, half carbonated water. Ideally, even something like a real sparkling water, like a San Pellegrino or San Benedetto, like the things that have some minerals and stuff in them. And then eventually get it down where it's like 2/3 sparkling water, carbonated water, and 1/3 Coke, and then slowly transition that out. So you're still getting that taste sensation, but you're eventually like cutting out its overall harsh impact and getting more of just a taste for that straight normal carbonated sparkling water. Just if you crave that sort of bubbly sensation. So it, you know, that can work. So there's a few different ways you can do it. So I think that's where I'll cut it off. So there's, you know, some good things you can do to get started, but again, the main takeaway here is setting yourself up for a successful New Year's resolution, or whatever you want to call it, new health approach, kickstart, whatever. Think about months and months down the line. Don't think about like the next 2 or 3 weeks. Add in those things a week at a time. Even just like these 5 habits, that's going to take you through like 6 weeks, like a month and a half, and get going. But like other tips that you want to do, remember, start with the easiest ones first, form those habits, build on them, and let them grow from there. And that's going to make you more likely to stick with it. Like, you got to think of it, your health and wellness is a long-term game, not just like, I'm going to be fit for 2 months. Like, you got to think months, years down the line. So if that's something you need help with as well, I do online health and nutrition coaching, and that's, you know, it's like a way to more access your goals, because you're being held accountable. Like, that's the whole point of a nutrition coach or any form of coach, is if you're kind of left to you're on your own and not have anyone checking in, or you don't have to check in with anyone and be like, oh, here's what I ate this day and here's what the week looked like, and to adjust it's hard. If a lot of people do have that ability and they can keep themselves accountable, but if it's something you think you need more guidance and then more specific like info as far as what to eat and planning out meals and portion size and, you know, all that sort of thing, that's something I do. So if you want more info as well, you can go to regainwellness.com/coaching and get a little more from that. And get a little more insight into like what's involved with it. And because it like the thing that the beauty of it is everything's done sort of by email, also by like, you know, text or whatever. So it's something like you can always check in. And as good as, you know, personal training and stuff like that is, it's, you know, you're meeting with someone maybe like for an hour once a week, whereas opposed to something like this, like an online approach, it's 24/7. Like anything that comes up, you write, I check pretty quick, able to get back, and you can get into more detailed stuff too. So if that's something that you think is beneficial for you or could help you in the new year, check out regainedwellness.com/coaching. So I'll cut it off here. Thanks for listening. Like I said, if you came to check this show out, I know your health's important to you. And also I know there's so many podcasts out there now and so many health-based ones and fitness ones. So the fact you're listening to this one, I really appreciate. So if you do like it and you haven't already, make sure you subscribe wherever you get podcasts, probably Apple Podcast, iTunes, but like I'm in anywhere like Google Play, Stitcher, like wherever you get a podcast, this should be there. So thank you again for listening, and I'll talk to you soon.